just get right into it, man. We are a week away from the legal tampering period of NFL free agency. A lot of rumors going on with the Bears. Been a lot of smoke today around Khalil Mack. That's been reported by different outlets. We heard that. Obviously, Trey Smith is going to be tagged. Hasn't officially been tagged yet. We don't know what the Chiefs are going to do there, but I just wanted your opinion on how you think the Bears and Ryan Poles should approach this free agency compared to how they've done it the first 3 years in Ryan Poles' term as general manager.
It's a great question because guys keep flying off the board. I feel like Trey Smith was a reasonable marriage for them with the cap space that they have and the needs that they have. And now you have the top draft or the top guard option off the board. Typically, guard is an interior offensive line is a pretty good spot to find free agents. If you look at the history, whether that's availability and the hit rate. But this year, there just aren't that many guards and centers available. So how they negotiate that is going to be interesting. What they do on the defensive line, it feels like they have a ton of money to spend and there aren't a ton of options. So I expect them to be pretty aggressive because I think that there's some urgency, especially on Ryan Poles' side of things, to make sure he gets this stuff in order in what is a huge season for him. But I'm curious how they go about it because there are not as many options available as you'd like when you have this much money to spend.
Yeah, and I think too also with that, like I think the bad thing about not even I guess not the bad thing, but the thing that's kind of crazy is you don't want to like go too crazy and try to make up for draft mistakes you made in the past and spend all the money. I think we've seen the Bears do that before, but at the same time, you don't want to be passive, which I kind of feel like the Bears have done in the Brian Poles tenure a little bit. To you, what is a more like out of the two lines, what is more important to spend free agent dollars on? Would it be the O line or the D line?
I would say O-line for this reason. I think that having certainty and a high floor on the offensive line is a necessity. Like you just have to make sure you have no weak links up front. On defense, you want stars. You want to make sure you're hunting for upside on the defensive line. So you need stopgap starters at guard. Like if they sign Will Fries to an $11 million a year deal to play right guard for them, that's acceptable. Like you just want to make sure up front on offense, you have 5 guys you feel good about. On defense, you're hunting for superstars. And so I feel like you're trying to, if you want to go in the draft that way because you want younger guys, guys with higher upside, that's typically how I think about it. And we'll see whether or not their needs and the available players in both of those areas line up with approaching it that way.
Now, with the name that kind of I won't say came out of nowhere. I feel like a lot of fans were talking about it, but I kind of feel like it was more of a we love this player more than the actual realistic thing. We starting to hear about Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack had a career year 2 years ago, 17 sacks 2023. Had only 6 last year, but still a solid contributor to that Chargers defensive line. Now we all know I think the big fish probably Sweat for Philadelphia, but what would you think about a possible reunion with Khalil Mack now that we hear that he's actually interested?
The only reason I would be hesitant about that is you have to think about what your timeline looks like as a team. Are you going to be ready to compete in even 2026? If you feel like that's the answer and you think Khalil Mack has 2 really good years left, I can understand that, but he's getting a little bit older. That's my only concern is that by the time you're really ready to push and try to compete for the division, even more than that, is Khalil Mack still going to be part of the plan? So I think that's why going a little bit younger at that spot makes a little bit more sense. But Khalil Mack is still a really, really good player. And if you look at this free agent class, there are no perfect guys. I mean, Josh Sweat's going to be on a 3rd contract. There's a lot of guys at several different positions. They're either coming off of injuries, 3rd or 4th contracts. So the fact that there are no guys that are outside of maybe like a Milton Williams or Osia Odighizuwa that you think is a 26, 27-year-old guy that you can sign in his prime, there are a lot of imperfect players available in free agency this year.
Yeah, and with the offensive line side of thing, I think we all I said on this show for weeks, I believe Trey Smith hits the the market when I see it. Like I just believe that really good offensive linemen just don't hit the market like that. And especially the way the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl, I just kind of felt like he was coming back. Now they could tag him, try to trade him. That could happen. They did the same thing with Snead last year. Let's just say they do decide to actually give him a long-term deal. How would you rank the available offensive linemen on the free agent market, and which position would you, go number one and spend the big dollars at?
There aren't a lot of guys. I mean, you look at guards outside of Trey Smith. Again, Will Fries is probably the next best option. He broke his leg last year. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're talking about here. Even the guys who are worth it, who are these second contract players, are a lot of them are coming off of injury. And then you move beyond a guy like Will Fries, Tevin Jenkins might be the best available guard in free agency. Kevin Zeitler is an older player on a one-year deal potentially. Mekhi Becton was a reclamation project who had one decent year in Philadelphia. You've got guys like James Daniels coming off of a torn Achilles. So the guard pool is just thinner than it typically is. Tackle was an interesting spot before this period started because I actually think that there were more left tackle options available in free agency this year than you almost ever see. Ronnie Stanley, Dan Moore, and Alaric Jackson, that's 3 starting caliber left tackles. You never see those guys hit free agency. And then Alaric Jackson gets signed to a long-term extension last week. So now you're down to 2 again, and there's a chance Ronnie Stanley's back in Baltimore. So you got 1 starting left tackle. At center, it's really Drew Dahlman and Ryan Kelly. Who knows if Ryan Kelly wants to even keep playing? And I think Drew Dahlman is a solid player. I think he is a specific player. He is undersized, and I think he fits what Atlanta likes to do. But if you look at Atlanta, their run game and their offense is different than almost anybody else in the NFL right now. They run tons and tons of outside zone, and that fits somebody that's a little bit undersized like Dahlman is. But if you look at what Ben Johnson did in Detroit, they ran every run under the sun. And I'm just not sure that Dahlman is a flexible enough piece for that to be the type of offense you want to drop him into. So it's unfortunate because in a lot of years, if you wanted to rebuild your offensive line through free agency, you'd be able to do it. Stars aren't available, but workable starters are available. And this year, it just, even with all the money the Bears have, I think it's going to be a tall task to find 3 starting caliber players that you feel good about. You're going to be dipping a little bit lower than you want to.
So cool. Triple double hat trick, I know the code too. Ice trade, go for trade, yeah we cold too. Getting paper on these player haters, old news. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you. Money on the other line.